So it's really funny because I left the administration this past June, and I've done no public speaking since then. And here I am in a big room, and I have a big build-up, so I think I might just hide behind the podium, and it might be safer here. And what's even worse is I get the slot right before lunch, so that's not good. And then I see a countdown timer, which is already less than 10 minutes. And for those of you that know me, I don't get anywhere in 10 minutes. I just, that's my first 2 sentences. So I think we're all in trouble, and I hope you're not hungry. So I'm sorry. So 2013. So, all right, we're here to talk about this, but let's talk about something else first. So it's been a crazy year. So a year ago, I was the Chief Information Officer and the Chief Data Officer for the City of Chicago. And that was cool. I had a really tough boss. Many of you know Mayor Emanuel, serious guy. And then everything's changed in the past few months. So I left the city. So I did 7 years. And then I took a fellowship over at University of Chicago, staying with my podium. So I'm now the Senior Fellow of Urban Science at University of Chicago, which is super exciting because I get to sort of explore some of my passions in this space. But the cool thing is I got a picture. And when I left on the last day, I got a summons to see the mayor. And I was all nervous. I thought maybe I'd be yelled at on my last day. And instead, there was my wife. And I got to say goodbye, so I have a nice picture, and it's in my office. But what we're here to talk about today is a book. There were a lot of things that I tried to do as the CIO and the CDO of the city, and there's certain things I wasn't able to finish up. And one of those, which we're wrapping up today, is a story about a book. Chicago was an amazing experience for me. So it was mentioned I was at Open Table. I joined the police department. I spent a number of years studying shootings and studying homicides and building predictive models. And then Mayor Emanuel was elected, and he appointed me to be a chief data officer. And in a city like Chicago, which didn't really have a history of open data, his mandate to me was to change that and to change it fast. It was something he had campaigned on, and his mandate was make it real. And the great thing is, in Chicago, we made it real. Everyone said, you can't do this. It's too hard. It's too much of a change. It's going to cost too much. All of the excuses that you can think of. And I like challenges. And we worked really, really hard. And we were able to turn Chicago into sort of one of the leaders in this space. And it was a milestone. And along the way, we were seeing efforts in other cities that were having similar success with this. And not just open data, but better utilization of data. So this came to, I had an idea. Because I'm kind of academic for those of you that know me, and I figure when you hit a milestone, when you get to a point where you've had success, you can start to write about it. You can start to tell the story. You can make it extensible. You can make it reproducible. So my idea was we should write a book about it. Because in academic Brett mind, you write a book about it, it's serious. Like, we did some really good stuff. So I had this idea. We need to write a book. We need to be able to tell our story and mark this as a real milestone in open data. So what do you do when you have an idea and you're like, okay, need to write a book. Where are we going to go from here? So I needed a partner. So one day I call up my buddy Jen. And this is how the conversation went. Hey, how are you? Good. How are you? Good. So everything good with the family? Yeah. And she'd ask about my kids. I have 3 little kids. Still not sleeping? Yeah. So, Jen, we should write a book. She's like, okay, on what? Open data. Sounds good, let's do it. And that was the discussion. And in reality, that simple 60 seconds, which we didn't even talk about the whole kid thing, led to the idea that she and I felt we were at a point where we could really celebrate the success and find ways to make our lessons get out there in a strong way. And Code for America, to me, was the obvious partner. We had a relationship with Chicago before. I think the world of Jen. She has wonderful insights, and she also has the ability to execute. And knowing I already had a job and the 3 kids, and I still haven't finished my PhD, awkward. When was I going to write the book? Because can you imagine my dissertation advisor being like, so you're writing a book and you still haven't finished your dissertation? Like, where do you go with that? I actually haven't told him about this book yet, so it's probably best that I'm really doing this right now. So Code for America was on board. And because of Code for America, we started to have their network and their infrastructure. And that's how we started to make this real. Now, I'm going to call out Lauren here. Lauren, is she in here somewhere? She said she was going to hide. Yeah. There you go. So I'm going to say something nice, and I'll probably say something else as well. So Lauren is great because Jen assigned her to work with me, and I'll be honest with you, I'm difficult. I don't always respond to those things called emails. I will get on the phone, I'll have a gazillion ideas, and then there's this whole execution piece. And Lauren brought the CfA piece to it and really helped make this a real project. And in a second, we'll talk about some of the outreach and things like that. She did, and in all seriousness, she did an enormous amount of work, and I really, really appreciate her dealing with me and helping to make this real. Now, here's the story I'll tell about Lauren. And it's really too bad I don't see her. So for this talk, I wrote a Prezi. And the story of this Prezi will epitomize the relationship. So I write the Prezi. I think it's pretty good. I have the mayor in there. My wife's in there. I'm feeling okay. So I send her the Prezi. And what was her response? I'm paraphrasing. Well, you kind of did it all wrong. I'm going to rework it. And that is the story of our relationship. So last night, I flew in yesterday. I went over to Code for America headquarters, and she offers me her new version, which she says, well, I made some minor edits. It's no longer a Prezi. She stripped out all my content, and we have a whole new deck. So that's our relationship. So thank you, Lauren. Okay. So we decided to do this book, and the idea was I would write a piece of it, but we also wanted to capture the stories from the cities and from the various, whether it's municipality, state, but also from non-government folks. Because the best way to capture these stories is to have people tell us their stories and write a chapter from all of the different lenses that they have. And so I started to hit my friends. You know some of the faces here. You have Dan O'Neill, you have John Bracken from Knight, you have Mike Flowers. And I'm like, all right, dudes, you owe me. You're writing a chapter. And those were the initial discussions. But then we realized the network should be bigger, and we could capture so many stories. And the funny thing here is I was worried about not having enough chapters, because how can you have a book that's like a little book? But as we proceeded down this process, we realized there were so many stories to be told. And then, wow, it turns out we have a lot of friends, and there are a lot of friends who could tell a lot of different stories. And it was amazing that we were able to sort of get them to do that. And these are all chapters that are now in the book. And they come, as I mentioned, from all over. We have the government folks, we have true technologists, we have people from foundations, we have community organizers. It's the whole different story, and it became more than just about open data. It became releasing the data, how to do it, how to use it, how to push it forward, how to take it farther. There were so many different angles that were beyond what we originally expected, that the book evolved. The original Jen Brett vision of the book was much more narrow. And then what we're releasing today is actually a much more holistic story of the movement and how far we've come. And how, I mentioned before this idea of a milestone. We have hit a milestone, and I've watched this over the past couple of years, where a number of years ago, it was a little niche thing. Ooh, open data. Ooh, we released a list of the parks in the city. That's exciting, but it is machine readable. And now it's part of the culture. It's part of systems. If I were giving a more technical talk, I'd talk about sustainability. Like there are large code blocks that automate the release of data. There are systems that depend on it. And now you have governments that are, making decisions off of this data. We have this idea of data-driven government. A number of years ago, you might have said that's just a buzzword. Maybe today it's in fact real, and we should mark this point in time. So everyone did all this work. Lauren did all the corralling and did an enormous amount of editing, and it became real. So I am really excited about this. And officially today we're launching this. We're launching the site. I think there are copies that are going out during lunch. I think the authors will be milling about. I encourage you to talk to them. I encourage you to look at the chapters. Some of the chapters contradict each other. Some people have different stories, different experiences. I see through the lens of Chicago. Others see through different lenses. It's an exciting moment. But beyond just releasing a book is this idea of we're releasing it on GitHub. So for two reasons. One, I think we all in this room would agree that releasing things on GitHub is a good idea. I think we kind of like that whole GitHub thing. But two, it makes it a living work, so that as the days, the weeks, the years go on, this is something that can be improved upon. The stories will change, the content will be improved, and it's up on GitHub now, and it's alive. And that's something that I think is really important. And I think by putting this out open source, we have the book which you can buy on Amazon, but you can also just get online, and you can just read the book. And as we think about who can get value from this, obviously people in this room, but one of the things I really found exciting, I was over at University of Chicago, and I talked to one of my colleagues, and he's like, well, we want to have the book as on our syllabus. And I'm like, wow, I've hit the big time now. So it's really exciting, and I think this is consistent with what we want to do. All right, this was just me being fun, and this was in my original Prezi. Thanks, Lauren. So I took the whole book, and I made it into a Wordle, because what else are you going to do when the baby gets you up in the middle of the night? And some of the things, when you look at the Wordle, some things are obvious, like data. Wow, surprise. But then you see other things in there, which Asheville is prominent. Interesting. Chicago, local relationships, things that are more subtle. There's a story here. And I found it pretty insightful how some things were obvious, some things were a little more subtle. So here's the part where, as Lauren would say, I go on a rant. So my attitude on this slide is, so what? We wrote a book. What's next? And this is, let me tell you all a bit of a secret. I worry about the future of open data. I worry about what's next. And I've talked about this before. We have hit a milestone today. We have done good work. We have made progress. We have built sustainable systems. But where are we going with this? How do we prevent this from just being spreadsheets on the web? How do we have true data-driven decisions? How do we make sure that we build extensible tools? We should mark this as a milestone, but instead it should be something we should launch past to the next step. We have made good work, but there's a lot more to do. How do we ensure it's sustainable? How do we make sure that if you have a small to medium-sized government, that they can get their open data out? How do you make it so, great, you have millions of rows of data out there, but how does that data turn into information? Because that should be our goal. It's not just transparency, it's doing business better. So this should mark us as Yes, milestone. How does the bar get much higher? How do we do government as smart as we do other sectors? That should be our challenge. So I put that out there that this is good, not enough. I hope that people look forward and raise the bar and really challenge ourselves and not be complacent, but instead challenge ourselves further.